I'll now welcome Tumi back to the stage. Tumi, who do we have up next?
I mentioned this right at the top, that we have a very, very special guest. We will have the 4-time downhill mountain bike world champion, and that is Greg Minnaar. Now, our colleague Sinead de Villiers has the enviable task of actually engaging with him. But first, before Sinead takes over, let's just take a quick look at what makes Greg Minnaar the greatest of all time.
This man's World Cup career started here in South Africa nearly a quarter of a century ago. Greg Minnaar has competed at 144 UCI World Cup races at 68 venues across the globe, with over 80% of those finishes being made inside the top 20. He used his incredible talent to first break into the World Cup top 10 at Big Bear in 1999. Minnaar has gone on to have 109 top 10 finishes, 81 podiums and a record-breaking 22 World Cup wins. He won his first World Cup race in Kaprun in 2001 at the age of just 18, taking his 22nd World Cup win in Lusa, Portugal, a staggering 20 years later. It's not just World Cups though where this man is outstanding. Greg has competed in 24 UCI World Championships. He has 3 bronze medals, 4 silver medals, and has got to call himself world champion 3 times. On any track, on any given day, in any conditions, this man will perform. He has beaten every other World Cup winning rider that has dared to challenge him in his career. And huge gaps don't bother this man, formerly known as the Fresh Prince of Big Air. In 2003, Minnaar rode the Red Bull Rampage, taking 7th in the most iconic freeride event of a generation. At 39, though, this man shows us that it's not about the numbers. This is a career decorated with more success than we will ever see again. That is why they call Greg Minnaar the greatest of all time.
Wow, I have to admit, I've watched that video a few times and it still gives me goosebumps. It's absolutely incredible. Greg Minnaar, thanks so much for joining us today. We're so excited to spend the next 20 odd minutes chatting to you. Now, our audience today are mainly from the financial industry in South Africa, and I think it's safe to say that over the last few years, the golf clubs have been exchanged for mountain bikes in the industry, but it's more like your marathon style riding. So Wines to Wales, Sani to Sea. How is this different to downhill racing, and how did you become a downhiller?
Well, thanks for having me on this. It's a different, nice surprise, really. So I originally started in cross country. My parents bought a bike shop in South Africa. So when I was growing up, I got into mountain biking, cross country and downhill. Downhill was something that I had grown up racing motocross, so my style of riding suited downhill, and the speeds and everything were very similar. So it's quite a bit different to marathon or stage racing. It's a time trial, all downhill from the top of the mountain down to the bottom through various terrains. But I still go out, and when I'm home, I try and get out and do a signing to see like I did last year. It was a lot of fun. So all our training's done on cross country bikes or marathon bikes, and so it's part of our training, and it's nice to be able to do these big events that we've got in South Africa.
Yeah, no, amazing story. Now, Greg, you've raced against the best of the best year after year, and the consistency of your performance is just phenomenal. I mean, your hit rate of finishing on the podium or in the top 10 is just like next level. How do you keep going? I mean, it's so much time away from home, constantly in structure with the training and everything. How do you stay focused and motivated to just keep performing?
Well, obviously, I'm quite a competitive person, as you could probably tell. And to me, if I'm going to compete and I'm going to be racing, I need to be in the best condition I can. So I have the last couple of years, as I've got older, decided to push more of the side projects besides racing and delegate a little bit more in those areas and focus more on racing. I find that the more I focus, the easier it is to get the results. So from training to body conditioning and movement to the bike and the equipment we race on. So the more testing I can do, the more time I have on the bike, and the more we can improve what we have and get to the races more prepared. I love racing. Racing's what I really love to do, and the training's the work side of it. So yeah, I'm just a competitive person. I love competition.
Yeah, it's still, I mean, just how long you've been racing is really so inspiring to so many athletes. Now, I have to admit, when I think of downhill racing and where are these top athletes likely to come from, I'm more expecting like the French Alps or the big mountains of North America and those first world countries where, let's be honest, there's better financial backing for these kind of sport. You, born in Pietermaritzburg, grew up in South Africa. How did you achieve such greatness from such an unlikely place? What were some of the challenges you had to overcome in your early years?
Well, yeah, I mean, financially it was really tough. My parents rebonded their house so that I could get to Europe and race my first season in Europe. I had understood that the terrain we race and ride on in South Africa is not what it is in Europe, in the Alps or even in the US. And I need to learn that style of riding and adjust my technique to that. And I just really lucky I had supportive parents. I went into an African development program within the Union of Cycling. The Union of Cycling has never given had never given a medal to any African cyclist. So I got a little bit of support and help once I got to Europe, but getting to Europe was tough. I was 16. I had left school early to pursue this passion and dream of mine to race, and spent my later teens just learning the ropes in Europe and trying to make it as a pro racer. So obviously there's a lot of risk involved, and I probably wouldn't direct my child into leaving school early to try and reach his goal. But when I think back to the decisions I made, I didn't have a lot of doubt that I wouldn't make it. There were times, obviously, with hardships through the way where I felt like I couldn't be living in Europe. I just didn't I just didn't feel comfortable as I was in South Africa, and it's hard as a 17-year-old to be traveling in Europe by yourself. So I remember back then thinking this is going to be a tough challenge, and I'm not sure if I can actually do it. But everything worked out after being there. Obviously, I'd take a lot of risks to be there, so I had to finish through with it.
Sure, no, it's such a young age on top of all the other challenges. It's well done. Now, I want to take you back to a memory that I think was just so special. In 2013, you claimed your third World Championship title, not just on home soil, but in your hometown. Now, I've got two questions I want to get to here. Firstly, how did you cope with the pressure? I mean, you must have known that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The likelihood of that event being hosted in Pietermaritzburg again was slim to none. And I'm sure you felt like the expectation, the South African downhill racer racing on home soil, he has to win. How did you manage that pressure? Even though it was quite deep into your career, long into your career, it was still a massive moment. And then how did it feel? Was it different to your other World Championship titles? Yeah, unpack that moment.
Yeah, I'm smiling just thinking back to it. It was obviously going back to Pietermaritzburg is always tough to race. People expect you to win, and that's always tough. Dealing with the pressure is something that I've always been pretty good at. And, when the pressure's up, I somehow seem to push this facade out that I'm actually quite calm and relaxed. But meantime, inside, things are spinning, But whenever the pressure's up for me, I always go back to the basics. And it's, mentally preparing, making sure I'm focused on all parts of the track. Making sure that my game plan is solid and that I know that I can execute it really well. And then once you enter into the race, it's about managing the risk. And although it may not seem it in downhill racing, but basically that's what you're managing the whole way down. So from the start, you have your game plan. Once you on that lost time. So you're never going to win a race if it's not 100%. And every time you ride a section at 90%, you've got to push a little harder in other sections to catch up that lost time. So that, on the added pressure of winning at home, was pretty tough. And possibly in my run, I'd made a few areas where I thought I needed to catch up a little more time than I needed. But it all worked out in the end. I managed to get through the finish line, and the feeling was not as joyous as I've had in other World Championship wins or World Cup wins. It was more a feeling of relief. I was absolutely exhausted. I mean, I really enjoy a night out after the races, and I can tell you it wasn't a late night. It was just, I was absolutely spent. It was so draining racing at home. It really was.
Yeah, no, Flip, I can imagine. And now to stick to the South African story, I mean, you've raced all over the world, I think 68 venues, wearing at occasion the South African flag. And what I liked about your latest World Championship title is you had a kiri, I'm not sure how best to say it in English, with a springbok head at the top, which made me think that you're quite like proudly South African. So tell us a bit more about, what does it mean to you, being proudly South African? What about our country makes it still your home and still the place where I think you do spend a fair amount of time at every year?
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely proudly South African. It's hard not to be. We've got a lot to be proud. We've got a lot to be proud about. Obviously, we have our challenges, but we're quite a resilient nation, and I think we've shown that we can get through different struggles and really tough times together. And somehow we unite way stronger after than through. So it's I'd like to think that we could have had more support from South Africa as a national sportsman, and we don't, but that shouldn't change the way you feel about your country and nations. No, definitely. I mean, every time we race the World Championships and we get into South African gear, it's definitely a different sensational feeling than representing our trade teams or our trade teams. So it's always fun. I must be honest. It's nice getting kitted up in the green and gold.
And I'm sure the Minister of Sports Excellence Award was then a nice one for you to receive earlier this year.
Yeah, there was. It's quite a surprise, really. Quite an intimate evening. Obviously through COVID, we couldn't have all the sportsmen there, but really interesting to see how women's sport has really picked up in South Africa. The cricket team had just come back from touring. They had a really great tour, and that's really cool to see. It looks like we really pushed hard into some of the women's sports, and that's good to see.
Yeah, awesome. Now I want to shift our focus to technology. The advancement in technology is certainly something that's challenged and changed the financial industry in South Africa, and you've had your fair share of changes as well. I mean, when you started racing as a teenager, you were probably on a bike with small wheels and rim brakes, and now you're on a digitally designed carbon frame with 29-inch wheels, and I'm assuming your tires are like carefully selected for every race, like super dialed in suspension. Just tell us a bit about that journey. I mean, your bike and your gear design has changed so much. Was it an easy journey to adapt? Was some of them a bit hard to get used to and to try out? Just tell us a bit about your technology journey.
Well, that's impressive. You know quite a lot about mountain bikes.
My husband helped me prep. He
Things
told me not to say
lot,
26-inch wheels. I had to say small wheels.
Yeah, things have changed a lot, and that's probably one of the stronger sides that I've had in racing. Probably added to the longevity I've had in the sport. It's I've always felt that everything's got to move forward at some point, and being stagnant within something is not going to push you any further or any faster or in any kind of direction, really. So we've gone to bigger wheel sizes and downhill, which lagged on a bit from like a marathon bike or anything else. Our bikes are completely carbon fiber. The suspension, Fox to our suspension, I mean, the engineers, mechanics are checking the suspension every 20 minutes to make sure that the pressures haven't changed according to the heat, if the heat's building up through the day or so. Our tires are all prototype tires, so the casing's a little thicker to stop punches. So there's a lot of advancement in the bikes. Probably one of the latest things is telemetry. So we use a lot of telemetry to set the bikes up. We're quite limited for time at a World Cup race to get up to speed on the track, to feel comfortable on the bike. and then obviously comfortable enough to push really hard through the race. So telemetry is quite important, and understanding and working with the telemetry that's easy to read and easy to translate back to the engineers, as well as the sensation of getting on the bike is super important. So there's a lot of technology movement at the moment with telemetry, and that telemetry is just really reading the suspension and understanding the rebound speeds, compression speeds, and really the balance of the bike. So we pushed really hard into that, and it's definitely helped me out a lot this last season. So I do enjoy the technology side. It's an important area for us to push hard into.
Yeah, no, you have to keep up, I'm sure. Now, I want to switch a bit to your team support. Even though your actual downhill run of 3, 4, 5 minutes is a solo effort, you so often refer to your team. You so often thank your personal trainer, Lau, your mechanic, Rob from Santa Cruz, and Joy from Fox. How did you nurture and establish those relationships? And yeah, just tell us a bit about that support structure you have that I'm sure has played a massive role in your success over the years.
Yeah, it does add to it. I don't think it's going to stop any rider not getting into the professional ranks. There's a lot of discussion whether someone without the sport can make it, and I'm sure they can. I mean, I found myself making it into it with very little support, but it's the consistency that the support provides. So, we're expected to win races, and we're expected to be on the podium at every World Cup. We've got so my career starts off. I have 2 trainers. I have a fitness trainer I've worked with since 2003, and recently I've had Alan Milway, a physical trainer for my gym routine and strength training. So I make sure that that's covered. That's something that, to me, going into competition, I don't want to think about. I need to know that I'm the fittest guy there and strongest guy. So I think that's quite easy to do. It's you hire the best trainers and make sure that you're ready to go. That's eliminated out of the equation of fitness. Then we go to the bike, and I've got Lyle, Big Lyle. He's a 6'6", so he's a unit. And Lyle's job is to make sure that my bike gets built up and set up to exactly how I want it. So the brake lever angle to everything, from the adjustment of the angles of the bike, everything's got to be set up to what I want, tire pressure. And Lyle takes care of the bike, and that's his sole duty, is to make sure that bike's in 100% working order and to the specs that I want it to be set up as. We've got Geordie from Fox, who makes sure the suspension is always well-tuned, well-serviced, and he'll do the minor adjustments after looking at telemetry and deciding which way you want to go. Geordie will make the adjustments to the suspension if we need to firm up the fork or add more rebound or stuff like that. His sole purpose there is to take care of suspension. I travel with the physio / gyro, Laura, and that's quite tough because I've had a lot of injury over the years. So it's a lot of injury management to make sure that my body can move well. And we do a lot of movement-based work rather than stretching or anything like that. So it's quite a tough job because I've had a lot of trauma to my shoulder, and everything seems to knot up into my back. So she's got a full-time job straight after the race. We probably get about 2 hours a day of physio and therapy. So that's quite a tough job. And we've got Steve Peter, next racer, World Cup racer. He's on track at all the World Cups, and he'll be just scouting different lines and seeing what other guys are doing. And if there's something that we need to be careful of, he'll be on the radio down to us, letting us know what's happening on track. So he's our eyes on the track when we, maybe down in the pits. So the team is quite big. It's not just a one-rider team. You're not just a solo effort, and that team all pushes for the results. So we've also got Kathy Sessler, and Kathy's like the team mom. She gets everything to her. She books all our travel. She makes sure everything's sorted out with the hotels, and logistically, she just takes care of everything. So, yeah, it's a decent sized team for around myself, and we have the same for the other riders on the team. So, it's definitely
it sounds like the winning strategy. It sounds like you're outsourcing the things that you don't need to spend your time and energy on. We're almost out of time. I'm going to push in 2 more questions. You're definitely known to be professional on and off the bike. Is this, like, brand and reputation, something you actively manage? And I guess the bigger question there is how important is it to your sponsors, and how hard or Tell us a bit more about that relationship and managing the Greg Minnaar brand.
Well, I've always kind of gone to try and be a more real brand. It's hard to promote something that you don't live by, or you're not personally set in that kind of way. So there are elements where you need to elevate the professionalism, and definitely around a race. But around the sponsors, I try and manage the way I actually am in life. It's really hard to push something that's not true to who you are. And I think that's important for a brand. And I think if a brand can align with you, I think they need to live and act by that nature as well. So I think that's the most important part about it. And marrying the two is obviously just an agreement within each other. If you feel that your brands do align, it's important that the relationship gets nurtured in that way, and let both sides express who they are in terms of the brand.
No, fascinating. Now, look, I have more questions that I would have loved to ask you. We are running short on time, so I'm going to ask you one last question. How does it feel to be the GOAT, the greatest of all time?
Well, I didn't want to burst your bubble earlier when you said that. I had a Springbok, I can't remember the word you used on my flag in the World Championships. But that was actually a goat. And,
Sorry.
I must be honest, it's something I never thought would ever happen in my career. Obviously, I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to be the world champion, and I wanted to be at the top end of the field. But I didn't expect to be racing at 39 years old. I didn't expect to have won as many races as I have. And so it's an honor to be called the GOAT, I guess. But it's definitely something that's happened along the way and was very unplanned.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate you dialing in from Spain. It's been so lovely chatting to you. And all of the best for the years ahead. We'll keep watching out for you on the Red Bull TV and Super Sport. And take care.
Thanks for having me. It's been great being on this, and I look forward to being home next week. So that's going to be great.
To celebrate your 40th, I believe. So you can no longer say 39. Great. Thanks so much, Greg. It was lovely.
Thanks, guys.
You.
Thank you.
Cool.
Ciao.
Cheers, Greg.